In example 3, with regards to the empirical rule, we have a university that has data on their students' IQ scores. They have the mean and the standard deviation of the data. And what we'd like to do in this example is complete the empirical rule. So suppose students at University A have a mean IQ score of 100 with a standard deviation of 16.1. So before we look at these examples, anytime you're dealing with the empirical rule, you have a bell-shaped curve, okay? And one of the properties with the bell-shaped curve is that it's symmetric, and it's symmetric about the mean mu, okay? Now, standard deviation, the way we define it is the spread away from the mean. So in the empirical rule, we're interested in spreading 3 units away from the mean. That's mu plus 1 sigma, mu plus 2 sigma, and mu plus 3 sigma. We spread 3 units away in both directions. So when we go in this direction, likewise, we'll subtract 1 sigma, we'll subtract 2 sigma, and then we'll subtract 3 sigma, okay? And what we're looking to do with the empirical rule is use the information given in order to complete this curve. So in the problem, we're given that the mean IQ score of this certain university is 100. So we're going to place 100 here. We'll make a note of the standard deviation, which is 16.1. Now, the way that you fill out the rest of the horizontal axis is by following the formula. So we'll use our calculator to help us here to fill out the rest. So to find this value, we need to do mu plus sigma, or 100 plus 16.1, okay? I'll go ahead and show in the calculator. Let's get this rolling. Okay. All right. So I'll go ahead and show in the calculator how we can get each of these values on the horizontal axis. So we need mu plus sigma, that's 16.1. What that's going to give us, that's going to give us the first value to the right. One spread away from the mean to the right. That's going to be 116.1. We'll do the same thing following the formula. The formula now says to do mu plus 2 sigma. So 100 plus 2 times sigma. And following the formula, that's going to find 2 spreads away. 2 spreads away is 132.2. And 3 spreads away, we'll do the same, 100. This time we need plus 3 sigma. So with the spread being 16.1, okay, that'll find our value 3 spreads away, 148.3. Okay. Now we do the same thing going to the left. Okay, we want to spread 1, 2, and 3 away to the left. So we need to follow the formula mu minus sigma, which is 16.1, the spread. Okay, that'll give us the value when we're 1 spread away, 83.9. Let's look for mu minus 2 sigma, so that's 100. Minus, let's try that again, 2 times 16.1. Okay, that'll give us 67.8. And then mu minus 3 sigma, that's 100. Minus 3 times sigma, the spread being 16.1. And this completes 3 spreads away. Okay, So before we even looked at the example, okay, we were able to fill out the bell curve according to the empirical rule. Now let's go ahead and look at examples A, B, and C. So A. Determine the percentage of students who have an IQ score within 3 standard deviations of the mean using the empirical rule. So what I want to point you to is they're using 3 spreads away, and they're asking us to determine the percentage. So if you're within 1 standard deviation of the mean, that's this empirical rule right here. 68% of the data will fall 1 standard deviation away, 1 spread away from the mean. Notice here we're 1 spread here, 1 spread here. That's 68% of the data here. 2 spreads away, that will consist of 95% of the data. That'll be 2 standard deviations away. The problem is asking us to determine IQ score within 3 standard deviations away. So notice 3 standard deviation away is here and here. So if they're asking us to determine the percentage, well, being 3 spreads away, here it says 99.7% of the data lies 3 spreads away. So for part A, we are looking for 99.7%. Okay. For part B, this gets a little bit more specific. Now it's asking to determine the percentage of students who have IQ scores between 67.8 and 132.2. Well, the question is, how did they get 67.8 and 132.2? Remember, that was how we completed the bell curve, right? So here's my mean, right? That's my mean. And the spread that we're looking for involves 67.8, which is how many spreads away from the mean? That's 2 spreads away. And we're looking for 132.2. How many spreads away will that be? That's also 2 spreads away, notice. So according to the empirical rule, if you're 2 spreads away, what's the percentage of students? The percentage is going to be 95%. Okay. And then for part C, let's see if we can maybe change the color. Let's do green. Now the question here is asking what percentage of students have IQ scores above 132.2 according to the empirical rule. So this is interesting here because we're no longer in between some standard deviation away from the mean. Now it's just asking above 132.2. Again, where did they get the value 132.2? Right here, okay? And what I want you to note, think about this line, this entire line right here as the value of interest. And we'd like to be above that. What that means is we need to be this way, okay? So if we translate over to the handout, and if you go to where it says mu plus 2 sigma, that's where we are, okay? And we need to be above this line right here. We're asked to be above an IQ 132.2. So above, what we do is we take the percentages, okay? The percentages that are above that line that we created over here, we want to be above it. So we take the percentages here. So for part C, you'll take those percentages, the ones that are broken down, 2.35, and we'll add that with 0.15. Okay, again, calculator's fine. If we go to our calculator, let's go ahead and do 2.35. And let's add that with 0.15. That total will be the percentage of students with above an IQ score of 132.2. So for part C, we're looking for 2.5%. Okay. And your homework will be very similar. It'll ask very similar questions using the empirical rule. The setup here is to complete your horizontal axis, okay, using the mean, using the spread, the standard deviation. That way we can determine spreads and percentages away from the mean.